So today I'm going to be talking about meditation and mindfulness from the Shift Network Summit from a few years ago that I attended. And I'll share from 3 teachers today. And the first teacher's name is Andrew Holocek. And he says, shifting in deep ways is like tectonic plates moving under the surface in the unconscious. For example, people only need one near-death experience to be like totally transformed. And there's this state called hyperlucid, which is where it's more real than this. Like, we're so clear that we're more clear than the physical world seems almost like dense, cloudy. And there's like a shape-shifting reality. It's lucid. There's a we become lucid in this newfound perspective of clarity, seeing what was already there, but we just didn't see it. And the inner body yoga, or like the meditation aspect, uses the subtle body. In Gemara, they say that the energy body and the physical body are, the difference is a shadow of a shadow. So Gemara is like a Jewish reasoning philosophy. So it's to discover who we are and who we are not. We don't know, so in sleep and dream, there's this medium, the ego falls away and it breaks, it discredits, it devalues, it was just a dream. But, in yoga, or in other words, in yoking to that energy body, in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch of Judaism, it's called the natural inner fire, the heat of the natural warmth, the aliveness that we have is we prepare for our death, is prepare for when we don't have it anymore. For example, hypnos is the power of sleep, and thanatos is the power of death. These are Greek words, but in Hebrew we would say that there's the idea that sleep is 1/60th of death. And it's kind of like a twin. We give up control, we sort of let go. And the applicability and the profoundness, the profundity of the non-conscious mind is really connecting to the infinite. So the Eastern view, or the original, in Hebrew, East also means kedem, also means original. So the original values are polyphasic culture, which is in many phases, usage of all 3 states, waking, sleeping, and dreaming. So wisdom traditions are not usually wake-centric, which means they're not usually about your waking mind, working, running around. There's a bias towards conscious in society, almost prejudicially, discriminationally, which is really an egocentricity. When we're conscious, right? When we're aware, who am I? The ego is exclusively identifying with form, and this is that's kind of like a Western view. So that's what we say, or the physical. So the subsequent view. So really the original view is we look at where it's easiest, where the light is already shining, which isn't where we always are meant to be or need to. And then we move into the study of darkness, the study of origins, right? The sun comes out of the darkness from the east. So we get birth from the womb. The universe, creation, is each person's a whole world. And even biblically, God said, let there be light. So in the Torah, so then you have light. There was darkness first, and also a seed germinates in the dark, in the soil. And that which doesn't exist in a dream state doesn't exist, because if you can't I'll tell you why, because in Kabbalah we learn in Judaism that you have the 4 worlds. You have Atzilut, emanation, then you have formation, then you have creation, then you have physical. So in the formation stage, it's not really fully created yet. So it can't be here in isness, in existence, if it wasn't in possibility. So we're actually more awake to the reality when we're not awake, which means this wake-centric mass, of people who, make every hour count when you're awake rather than get good rest and allow your subconscious mind to process everything while you're sleeping. It's exactly the place where the keys are not illuminated. So this egocentric kind of thirsting for artificial light is why so many people have cell phones, and why there's so many street lights and car lights, and it violates the natural life curfew of going in, then to sleep with this lust addiction for artificial light. So concentrated mind work in darkness, closing our eyes, connecting with that reality, progresses spirituality. It's they call it a nocturnal agenda, despite the fact that it isn't really accepted as being necessary for enlightenment or awakening. No, you should be awake to it. So here, obviously, we're thinking of a different perspective, where in reality it taps us into the everything of the unconscious, the ugly, flowing us into the more subtle realms, which are supported by the more subtle bodies, which have their own wisdom. in Judaism. We know we have many levels to the soul. There's 5 that are before. So you have the physical body, and then even the physical body, there's the godly and the animal, and then you have the spirit, and then even within the spirit, there's many different ways of talking about it. And then there's the neshama, which is the soul, and then where the soul comes from, which world, and then each of them, and then you have your life, and then you have your oneness, right? The highest level, so or the most root level. So we can descend past the rational mind and conscious, and we say descend to get into ourselves. By closing our eyes from this outside world, we descend into ourselves to actually go out into the infinite, which versus when we're awakened to everything looking, it's like we're limiting to what we see physically. And waking down is kind of like this transformation by inducing the lucidity into the sleep stage, like this awareness, the conscious, we marry them, the conscious awareness or the meditative being, which is not by default. This waking state is kind of like unnatural. And then what we can be lucid to in the dream is even more real in the sleep. So we may be blinded by the light at first. Like if you think about it, your pupils constrict and contract to light, but we can practice to wait naturally. We can start to see the unseen that was already there. Like we can look in the dark and at first we can't see anything, but then slowly it will be revealed. We figuratively and literally, and we just often don't usually have the patience to wait. So meditation is you become habituated to openness, to relaxing into what's there. The aperture of awareness, like the hole opens, and we become more receptive. This is an orifice, it's a hole of attention that expands past the visual field. 1/3 of the brain processing is actually on the sight sense, so sight-centric, but there's so much more information and stimulus that we can take in if we're not only focusing on that like main sense that we rely on. So what we're already doing is sleeping and dreaming. May as well get the collateral benefits of being in that playful, sort of curious, open-minded, like intrepid explorer of the felt energy and the winds of the mind in a way that teaches us about the architecture and the patterning, the map of our mind. Even if you never have a lucid dream, like it awakens us to the truth of reality with more lucidity for the alwaysness of us. And there's actually 2 states. Going towards sleep is called hypnagogic, is descending into sleep, and hypnopompic is sleeping, is going away. So we're getting out of sleep. And if we want to move to be more lucid at night, we have to be more lucid in our waking life, and that's what we call mindfulness. The next teacher I'm sharing from is called Sarmiento, and this is on trusting life. So the powerful surrender from needing control, because we're not actually in control, is when life is going to unfold as it does. What we can control is how we relate to what's happening in life. The more we let go of the handlebars of life, the more we grew, learned, experienced, rather than us thinking we know where we're going or what we're going to be doing. The possibilities are truly limitless just by letting go in that way. Trusting life has been a huge, like kind of like a life mantra, trusting life. And granted, and like as a prayer, we could say, granted that I may be given the appropriate difficulties and sufferings on this journey, so that my heart may be truly awakened, so that my practice of liberation and universal compassion may be truly fulfilled. And I'm stepping back for a second to Andrew Holocek, the previous teacher, who actually talks also about how there's no darkness within, there's just the light unseen. And that the broad spectrum integrity of ourself that yoga talks about, the like inner yoking to the energy body, it demystifies the whole lucid dream arena, because what's found now is found then. Like we don't know if it was always there. The past becomes different based on how we see things now. We suddenly can see a different thing that we didn't know was there. Maybe we would have acted different, but we weren't meant to see it then. And then finally there's this idea of liminal space, which is the threshold of wake and sleep and neither. It's like a plasma. It's like a mind phase of middleness, intermediary. And it's in Hebrew we sort of say that there's this mati velo mati. It's like here and not there. It's like touching and not touching at the same time. It's touching the light, touching the darkness. It's like neither one. Or like when someone's married, someone's not married. It's betrothed, they're not fully married, but they're not single. It's like Hebrew, in Judaism, there's a lot of like the sort of parev, we call it neutral. And now the third teacher is called Mushim Ikeda, and the main teaching here is that intention is not impact. So it does require humility, like the desire to connect, for example, is going toward ignorance and insensitivity of perhaps diversity, race, culture, inclusivity, etc. Because we aren't psychics. We have to stabilize, ground, and open to not take things so personally, and practice non-harm, which is to cherish all life. So our intention is not always our impact, right? So in other words, the space to be our many selves gives space for others to be also their many selves, and allows for not adopting a person as, the view that they're difficult. Rather, that's being judgmental and condemning. We're being the difficult person. When we allow life to be messy, ageless, unregulated, contradicted, recognizing we'll offend others accidentally, it means we learn how to actually make peace with being human and letting the inner perfectionist voice drop away, along with the deep guilt and shame and hiding away, which is they call it the plague of imposter syndrome. And it shows up, from over criticism in childhood. So we can show up curiously, kindly to ourselves and to others. This is a less defensive, leaning in, sort of establishing from generosity. In Judaism, we call it chassidus, like from the side of chesed, expansion, mercy, love, kindness. Saying things like, tell me more, rather than, I'm not what you're calling me. Like, I'm not harmful, I'm not racist, I'm not homophobic. They may say no, they're too hurt, or they may say why, and we can receive and incorporate it, then we can grow without taking it personal. And a healthy adult ego can stand up for my rights. It doesn't allow, boundaries to be trespassed, and even lets it be enjoyable too to try, where making a mess is part of the process of becoming more functional and whole. And humans do make mistakes. We can be good-hearted and still mess up. It doesn't mean we're bad. So mindfulness is less I am and I am not, which is good and bad. Basically thinking less of ourselves and experiencing life, and remembering weeds don't know they're weeds. It's not like they're trying to do anything bad. They're just growing in the wrong place, or they're not what we wanted. That's not what we're intending. So when we hurt someone, we can let our regret and embarrassment turn us toward them with compassion, reparation, forgiveness, reconciliation. And finally, we can regain our buoyancy and equanimity and restore it when we are making space for humor between whatever is happening and our stake in it, like our self-involvement. We can see things as absurd or be in shock kind of, and imitate, compare, satirize it, which means to make a parody of it. And it's not the end of the world. We start to recognize there's something called proportionality, and we can cope with shocking, difficult situations without even laughing at someone, but just recognizing how extreme things are. Anyway, have a good night and be well.